Hello, and in this session we're going to be looking at the stages of learning and guidance. So as it says there are certain stages that you have to go through when you're learning a movement skill, and the names of those stages are the cognitive, associative and the autonomous stage. So let's look at the first one, the cognitive stage. So this is considered to be the earliest stage, where there's lots of trials and error, and there's poor technique and limited success. So let's have a look at an example. So we can see here that there's lots of errors and there isn't much fluency to the skill, so therefore we can easily say that this person is in the cognitive phase of learning. Okay, so let's now look at the associative phase. So here we can see there's greater consistency in the performance of the basic skills, there's fewer errors, so therefore we can easily say this person's in the associative phase. So what you'll have seen there is the formation of that motor program, a development of the feeling, there are fewer errors, more consistent, better fluency, but interestingly some people never actually leave that stage. So let's look at the last stage, the autonomous stage of learning. So here basic skills are very easy, advanced skills are fluent, they're very consistent throughout their performance, and they can focus on other aspects, for example tactics, because they have spare attention. They don't need to concentrate on the skill, therefore they're in the autonomous phase. So in there's a greater amount of accuracy, fluency, it's a well-grooved motor program and gives you more time to think about other things, and it's known as spare attention, where you can focus on potentially tactics. So what they actually look like is, in the cognitive phase you've got poor technique and limited success, in the associative you have more consistency, and in the autonomous there is accuracy and fluency. Okay, so there's the stages of learning. Now we're going to have a look at the guidance that you could use for each one of those stages, and we'll look at the cognitive stage to start with. So the four types of guidance are visual, verbal, manual and mechanical. So we'll look at the visual first and foremost. So what we're talking about here is potentially drawing a diagram for somebody. It's about a poster of a movement skill, or the main one. Yeah, so the demonstration, this is where the teacher is going to take control and give that mental image. And that's what that allows the performer to develop, is the mental image, what it's actually supposed to look like. But the demo or image must be accurate. But what it does do is allow you to break down the skill into those smaller sections, which is really, really effective for the learner. Now the negatives is, if the demonstration is incorrect, the coach may not be able to perform the demonstration, and therefore probably it's not going to come across very well. But we'll say for now that the type of guidance visual is good for a cognitive learner, but it's not going to be on its own. So let's look at verbal next then. So for verbal, what we're looking at here is the coach. Let's see what he's got to say for himself.
Have a nice flexion of the elbow and wrist, and you're going to have a gap between the ball and your fingers. Then you're going to step into it, and this hand's going to let go, and just go one, and push.
Alright, so what you should have heard is a description of the skill or the motor program, and it builds on the visual guidance. Very rarely do you just see or hear, it's both of those two together. And it's really good because it can come in the form of feedback. It can give you correction of errors, as the coach did in the example, but it can help you to focus on those particular components that the coach wants you to. But the disadvantages are information overload, and I think we heard that. So what you need to do is only give a few clear teaching points, and some skills are just too complex to explain. Think about trying to explain a somersault to somebody who's never seen one. So it's not good for cognitive learners, but it is if you only use a few guidance points or teaching points. So we say not verbal on its own, it must be linked to visual, and that can then aid the cognitive learner. So let's look at manual and mechanical. So manual is about you literally putting somebody into the particular position that you need to develop that skill. So I'm sure we can all think of, gymnastics when we've had to help somebody do a headstand or a handstand, or it might be about the rotation of arms in relation to a running technique, whatever it is. And this is closely linked with the mechanical, where we use a piece of equipment or apparatus, and we have the example here of the waistband for the trampoline. And that reduces that fear factor, and it's good for cognitive learners because it increases their confidence. It's good for complex or dangerous skills as well. But some of the disadvantages, so it can give a sense of false security, becoming too dependent on that support. So for example, a float in swimming, once you take the float away they may struggle. And if they do have that float, then it reduces the kinesthesis, the flow of the skill. So you don't get to know what it actually feels like properly. So we'll say yes to mechanical and yes to manual for the cognitive learner. Now let's look at the associative learner. So this one is a slightly higher level, a slightly better skill, more consistent in their performance, but they're not an expert just yet. So let's have a look at this then. So the visual. In this we're saying yes to a demonstration, but it's to highlight minor errors. We could say yes to video analysis. Again, this is to view the perfect skill, as they've already got a mental image, so they don't need to know what it looks like, they just need some further progression. The verbal, again, yes, we'll say to this one, and the reason for that is it can give more advanced feedback. So those tiny or those minor errors that might needed to be there, and now what we can do is we can start to focus on particular cues, so the raise of the foot, the pull back of the wrist in relation to badminton. But we can start to add in, and this is the difference, tactics. Okay, let's move on to manual then. So for manual, again, we're just being more specific and we're looking at advanced body positions. There's also that aspect of safety and confidence, we could also use that, but it must be gradually removed, and that's the same with the mechanical as well as the manual. So for the mechanical, let's think about the bowling machine. We could use that, but it's got to be at a higher level than it was for the cognitive learner. Alright, so let's move on to the autonomous learner. So this is the accurate and fluent performer, and let's think of visual. So the video of their own performance would be an excellent idea, wouldn't it? Because then they could highlight the small errors. It's very, very effective, but it has to be watching somebody of a similar ability. You can't then give them someone of a lower ability, or they're not going to learn much from that. And the verbal, this is a really interesting one at this stage. Now it becomes more of a discussion. And the idea is to identify small errors that you may need to get those higher level skills. But because they've got an understanding of tactics, it's the advanced skills and the advanced tactics and the complex information that they already know about that they're now able to discuss with you, and that's why that verbal is really good at this level. So they've already got a kinesthesis or a feeling of the skills, so they don't really need manual, but they might need mechanical. And think about the bowling machine again, but it's at the highest level. Alright, so let's look at a knowledge checker then, in other words a question. So for each of the 3 phases of learning, describe the use of different types of guidance to improve the performance of a movement skill. And we're looking for 6 marks. So it's going to be probably 2 marks for each phase, and the first thing we do is identify the command word, which is describe. It's got to be linked to guidance, and you also must link it to the improvement of the performance of the movement skill. So all we're going to do is go through each one of the different stages. So the cognitive first, visual. So we're given a demonstration, a video or a poster of a movement, and what it's doing for that learner is giving a mental picture, giving an idea of what they should do. Go to verbal. Here, notice that it's the basic information of what needs to be done. Also, you can give them positive feedback, positive reinforcement to develop their movement skills as well. So the next thing that we need to look at then is the manual. Physically supporting the movement into a position so they can gain confidence, reduce the risks, and develops a kinesthesis, or starts to develop that kinesthesis. So the mechanical, again, it's about the safety, the confidence, the reduction of the risk, and they learn the basic body positions. So it's the descriptive terms that we need to use that's the difference between each one of the 3 stages. So for the associative, so for the verbal is to refine or correct the development of the skills, or to introduce tactics, because this learner, the associative learner, is at a higher level. So the visual, the demonstration of more advanced skills or more difficult skills. So hopefully you can see that there's an easy pattern forming here. It's just about the description of the level, and that we're just using each one of the different types of guidance. So more specific or advanced body positions for safety, confidence, but should gradually be reduced or removed. And for example, think about you supporting somebody in a handstand. They should be able to do it themselves whilst they're in this stage. And again, here we have an example of the mechanical, the twisting belt, for more complex skills, but you can also groove the skill as well. So for the autonomous phase, the mechanical, we're looking at the bowling machine. It's got to be set to a difficult level to stretch or challenge. Another example is the bucket in gym, the pommel horse. You can use that one there as well. So visual demonstration of difficult moves as a reminder of basic skills as well, it could be, but the video must be of the top performer, and it allows analysis, and there we lead into the next one, which is the verbal, that allows that discussion to take place. So it's the advanced tactics or strategies, technical detailed discussion or outcomes, and very easy to use negative feedback at this stage, because it's quite predominant at this level, because the learner's able to take on board negative feedback about those minor errors that they need to adjust. Manual, we stay away from this one really at this level. It's limited manual at this stage to encourage the kinesthesis, in other words that feeling of the skill on its own. Okay, so pause the video, go back over any sections that you're not sure of, and I'd like to say thanks very much for using Flip Teach.